What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the 60 for 60 Sports Podcast. My name is Eric.
My name is Tom.
My name's Zach.
My name is James.
And we are representing the Nomads today. And we have a very special sports podcast for you today. Our month of March podcast is coming a little bit later, but we wanted to give Selection Sunday time to go through because this podcast is going to be 100% on March Madness. The NCAA tourney, 68 teams all competing together to become number one, but only one person can win. So what we have done is we've broken up the brackets. Each one of us is going to have a different bracket to break down. Tom's going to break down the southern region. Which one of y'all has the West again?
I have the West.
James has the West. Zach then has the East, and I am going to be covering the Midwest. Now, we're going to break these down to the Sweet 16, and then from that point, the four of us are going to debate our Sweet 16s. We're going to be stuck with the four that we each pick, so regardless of what we have on our personal brackets, whoever I have in the East doesn't matter, so on and so forth. It's all on the four of us and who we pick. So, Tom, since you got the South, you want to take it for a spin?
Oh, I'll take it for a spin. Yeah, so first, the 116. Okay, first things first, the favorite in this division is obviously UVA. UVA plays amazing defense, and they just, I've never seen a team that is so good at just slowly choking you out throughout the course of a game. And usually they say, you need to slow down the game when you lose. For UVA, you actually have to speed up the game, which is a lot taller of a task. So UVA is a very unique and formidable giant in this bracket. My underdog, and don't judge me for saying this, my underdog in this bracket is Davidson. Davidson has been rolling recently. They're peaking at the right time, and if you're talking about postseason runs and what we typically see out of a team that makes a postseason run, it's the team that spiked, peaked, whatever you want to call it, at the right time, and Davidson rolled right to an A-10 championship and rolling right into a tournament with a weaker than usual Kentucky team. However, Kentucky did roll right into an SEC championship as well, so Kentucky is not weak by any means, but I think Davidson is your big underdog in this bracket. Definitely keep an eye on them. Moving on to the picks, UVA is going to destroy UMBC. It's not even going to be close. UMBC does not have anywhere near the skill set to deal with UVA. Creighton is pretty good. I think Kansas State is better. They have better competition out there in the Big 12, and they've definitely proven themselves that they can play with teams on their own skill level, which is what Creighton is. So Kansas State's going to move on. For the 5-12, I picked Davidson over Kentucky. Like I said, Davidson peaked at the right time. They don't have the best players, but Kentucky has a relatively weak team this year comparatively to previous years. But I think Davidson rolls right into a big upset of Kentucky. 4-13, I'll pick Arizona over Buffalo. Arizona, similar to Davidson, obviously in different contexts because they're a bigger, kind of a bigger profile team. They rolled to a Big 12 tournament championship. They had some struggles early on in the season, but I think they're peaking at the right time. And they could make a run at this thing. I'm going to pick Miami over Loyola. Loyola is kind of just here because they won their tournament, honestly. Miami's a better team. And Tennessee is kind of one of those teams, moving on to the 3-14, Tennessee is one of those teams that kind of flew under the radar all season, but they do have a very good team. I'm going to pick them to beat Wright State. I don't think Wright State's very good. They haven't played anybody. They have 0 games against top 25 talent. I picked Texas to beat a relatively weak 7 seed in Nevada. Texas is just better. They'll move on. And give me Cincinnati to beat Georgia State. Cincinnati is it's an interesting bracket because Cincinnati is a very similar team to UVA. And I'll probably talk about this more later if I had the opportunity, but Cincinnati is one of those defensively methodical teams, but they can also turn on a afterburner and score on you. So they're pretty frightening prospect in this tournament. And moving on to the round of 32, day 2, 1 versus 9 matchup. UVA is going to beat Kansas State. Kansas State can't deal with how UVA plays. I really don't think they can deal with that. They're used to the Big 12. There's a lot of fast-paced action there. UVA is going to slow down the game, and Kansas State's going to not know what to do with themselves, so UVA wins. Davidson could upset Arizona. They really could, but I think Arizona is just better. Once again, 2 teams peaking at the right time. Arizona is just a better team overall, so when both these teams are peaking at the right time, I'm going to pick Arizona over Davidson 9 times out of 10. So Arizona moves on. 6 versus 3 matchup is a unique one. Miami versus Tennessee. I picked Miami. I think Tennessee's relatively weak. I think this is a trap pick. They picked Tennessee to go beyond the round of 32. Miami's very good at knocking down teams that are on their level or slightly above. So I think Miami takes down Tennessee. Then finally, Cincinnati is just straight up better than Texas. I don't really want to explain or don't really need to explain any more beyond that. Texas is average, and Cincinnati is definitely squarely above average, so Cincinnati takes this matchup. And that makes my Sweet 16 a 1v4 matchup between UVA and Arizona, and a 6v2 matchup between Miami and Cincinnati.
Oh, this is a good little conference or grouping of powerhouses. They're led by Xavier as the 1 seed. You got Gonzaga in there. You got Michigan. You got UNC. There's some good teams in this one. Xavier obviously is a favorite. One that could upset people is probably Gonzaga and make it out of group. So to start, I have Xavier over whoever they play. Then you got to go Missouri over Florida State. Then you go Ohio State. They're not getting upset. You got Gonzaga over UNC Greensboro. There's no upset for Houston. San Diego State loses. You got Michigan over Montana. Providence has been playing well, but Texas A&M still travels well. Then you got UNC Lipscomb. I like the matchup for Lipscomb, but I think UNC still pulls it out. Then you got Xavier, Missouri. I say Xavier still. Gonzaga, Ohio State. Gonzaga still is going to keep going. You got Michigan, Houston. Michigan is still hot from their conference tournament. They advance. Then you got UNC, Texas A&M. UNC is still hot. They advance to face Michigan. My Sweet 16 is Xavier, Gonzaga, and then you got Michigan, UNC. To get out of there, I think Michigan would, between them and UNC, and Gonzaga's going to win versus Xavier to make a matchup of Gonzaga and Michigan.
And moving on to the East, Zach will have that one.
All right, so the overdog, if you will, team that could be upset in this region, probably have to lend to Texas Tech. I mean, Stephen F. Austin has had some upsets over the year, and if nothing else, Florida or St. Bonaventure, UCLA could take them out in the second round. The team most likely to pull some upsets in this region had to be Virginia Tech. Years past, they've been kind of just an unknown factor, but ever since they got the new coach from Marquette, he's been really, really digging into them guys and establishing a culture there. And they can shoot the lights out when they want to. They can play with anybody. I mean, they beat UVA this year, and they've had some good wins against Duke and UNC too. So start the bracket. We got Villanova against 16 seed. No 1 seed has ever lost to a 16 seed, so Villanova moves on. Virginia Tech, like I said, they're really good. Alabama's got Colin Sexton, who's a beast in his own right. But I think Virginia Tech moves on there. West Virginia against Murray State. Murray State, they used to be pretty good. I think they had 30-plus wins a few years ago. They were almost undefeated. I just don't think they have enough firepower this year. West Virginia moves on. Wichita State and Marshall. I think Marshall should thank its blessings that it's in the tournament, but Wichita State's going to move on. And then you got Florida against St. Bonaventure or UCLA. St. Bonaventure's, I think, could give Florida a run for the money, but Florida's got some decent three-point shooting, and I think they move on. Texas Tech, I think Texas Tech can move on as well over Stephen F. Austin. I don't think they'll get tripped up too much. But Butler against Arkansas. Butler, I think, will move on in this round. They just have the pedigree there. And then Purdue against Cal State Fullerton. I have Purdue moving on. Next, round of 32 matchup between Villanova and Virginia Tech. I think this one's going to be a lot closer than Villanova expects, but I think Villanova move on. They'll close out the game. They have Jalen Brunson, one of the best players in the country. So he'll move on. West Virginia against Wichita State. I got West Virginia moving on. Wichita State is very, very, very good. I would not be surprised if Greg Marshall has them making a deep run. Next, we have Florida against Texas Tech. I think Florida moves on from here. Like I said, Texas Tech just doesn't feel like a very strong team this year. And then lastly, we have Purdue and Butler, and I got Purdue moving on. The Boilermakers have been playing great, great basketball this year. So the mini Final Four for my bracket, if you will, for the Sweet 16 for the East will be Villanova, West Virginia, Florida, and Purdue.
All right, so for me, I've got the Midwest. Again, Kansas and Penn. One seed's never lost to a 16 seed. And I truly feel, the Midwest is kind of filled, sort of like James's bracket. It's filled with a lot of top-heavy teams. And there isn't a ton of room for upsets, really, in this bracket. Kansas is going to beat Penn. One seed's never lost to a 16, and I don't see that changing now. Seton Hall and NC State, they're both kind of very similar teams to me. Both of them are kind of like fringe teams that I think are marginally overrated, but I feel like NC State's going to win there. As far as Clemson, New Mexico, Clemson, I'll be honest, probably could have gotten higher if they hung with UVA a little bit longer, or if they managed to get past UVA in the ACC tournament, losing in the semifinal, dropped them to 5. I don't think they'll have any problem with New Mexico State. Auburn and Charleston, again, it's a mismatch of talent. I think Auburn can take them. Then TCU against the play-in team, either Arizona State or Syracuse. I think Syracuse might be able to take Arizona State. They were really strong early, and I feel like that's why they got in. They fell off at the end and never really recollected. Syracuse might be team number 68, but I think they're better than Arizona State. So I think Syracuse will get in, and I think Syracuse might be able to upset TCU, who might be looking past them. Michigan State against Bucknell, again, it's a talent issue. Michigan State will dominate that matchup. I have Oklahoma beating Rhode Island, or let me say I have Trae Young beating Rhode Island. That team, the team's not helping him very much, but I think Oklahoma can win that game. Duke won't have much problem with Iona. I don't see a Murray. I don't see a Mercer happening to Duke this year. I think they'll have no problem there. The round of 32 gets a little interesting. Kansas against NC State. Kansas doesn't have a player averaging less than 12 points a game as starters. Their offense is off the charts, best offense in the NCAA. I think they handle NC State. I think they overwhelmed them. Clemson against Auburn. Again, I think Clemson is underrated solely because they lost in the semifinals in the ACC tourney. So I think Clemson will beat Auburn. I think Michigan State ruins any hopes of Syracuse making it past round of 32, and I think Duke. I think Duke's overall talent level is too much for Trae Young to overdo. So my Sweet 16 is Kansas, Clemson, Michigan State, and Duke. Going on from there, this is where the conversation starts for us. So our overall Sweet 16 that we have total is Xavier, Gonzaga, Michigan State, UNC, UVA against Arizona, Miami against Cincinnati, Kansas versus Clemson, Michigan State versus Duke, Villanova, West Virginia, and Florida and Purdue. So, let's have a conversation here, guys. Tom, since you went first before, I guess throw us your South winners, and let's debate here, boys.
Sure, I'll throw you guys some South winners. Surprise, surprise, it's the higher seeds. UVA is going to beat Arizona. Once again, UVA is just so tough to beat because of the way they play, their defense. And they won't be beat unless they run into a team that does a similar play styles to them and does it better on that given day. UVA beats Arizona. Cincinnati will beat Miami once again. Miami benefited from kind of an easy route to the Sweet 16 here, the way I picked it. And Cincinnati is just better. So the Elite 8 matchup classic 1v2 matchup. UVA Cincinnati, and if you like defense, this is going to be your favorite game of the tournament.
And that is not a very common, exciting factor in the NCAA is defense, which is why UVA's never really been that big of a conversation piece because of defense. And that could probably be do you think that could be bad? Like UVA and Cincinnati being a straight defensive game? Who wins?
But this is the thing. This is the reason why I'm going to pick Cincinnati to win this game, is because Cincinnati has a very explosive offense. They can flip that switch. I think they're the only team in this bracket that can speed up the game when UVA slows it down to what they want to call their pace. So I think Cincinnati's the only legitimate threat to UVA in this bracket, and I think Cincinnati pulls off this upset and goes to the Final Four.
The only question I have for that, and feel free to jump in, Zach or James here, is, do you think Cincinnati has the talent level to overdo it?
Who was that directed at?
Anyone. It's an open. It's an open question here. Do you think Cincinnati has the talent to be a legitimate number 2 here? Because I thought Cincinnati was overranked. I didn't see much about them going into this tournament except me having a 30-4 record. So I don't really know much about Cincinnati to really be able to say if they're a legitimate number 2 or not, if they're overrated.
I think if you look at the common theme of the teams that beat UVA, or they're teams that out-offense UVA's defense, Cincinnati trying to fight fire with Virginia, they won't be able to do it. You're not going to out-Virginia. What you got to do is you got to be able to spread them out, beat them with some penetration, and kick out open shooters. Like that's how you beat it. It's what West Virginia did, and they also ran up and down the court, and then that's what Virginia Tech did. They spread it out. That's the most efficient way to beat UVA. Duke almost beat UVA, but we didn't play our game. We tried to play UVA's game towards the end, and we lost because of it.
Since he's going to win, just so you know.
That's an easy
Well, the guru has spoken.
Yes, the guru has
That's a
spoken.
wrap, boys. It's over.
Close deal. See, for me, I actually, when I did my bracket, I actually have Miami and Cincinnati as well, and I actually have Miami beating Cincinnati. Just because I feel like, again, I don't know too much about Cincinnati outside of the fact of their record and their 2 seeds. So for me, I obviously look at seniority. Teams that have a lot of seniors are going to do better against teams that have a lot of freshmen. It's a historical thing unless you have a certain extreme talent gap, and even then, sometimes it's not enough. But Cincinnati, they don't have a bad loss. They beat teams that they're supposed to beat. But of their 4 losses have all been about teams that they didn't have a chance beating. And I think Miami kind of fits that mold of a team that they probably shouldn't beat. But Miami's also a French team as well, so that's probably the spot that I'm most prepared to lose is Miami early on. But Cincinnati is one thing I do see on here. Cincinnati has a history of beating teams out the gate. They go off into early leads and then hold those leads. And that's something that you're going to struggle with against UVA because UVA is pretty good at closing back in.
Yeah, I think the key word for this matchup is going to be pace and pace control of the game. And, UVA obviously has the tools to make that happen and control their game. That's what they've done all season. They kind of just slowly snuff out teams, highly offensive powerhouse teams only score like 55 points against them. And it's so frustrating to play against and so mind-numbing to play against a team like UVA because they just play this slow, methodical game, and you eventually end up losing, and you're like, what the heck just happened? So I think Cincinnati has the tools to control the pace of the game more so than any other team in this tournament. So I think it's going to be a really, really great game. I just personally feel like Cincinnati is going to be able to control the pace, take the pace control away from UVA. UVA is not going to know how to react, and Cincinnati is going to eventually pull the upset here. But that's just my opinion.
All right.
I like the matchup, though. This is going to be a great game if it happens.
What do you guys think, Zach, James? Who do you think comes out of the South?
I think the worst matchup for UVA would be Arizona. I mean, what UVA and Tony Bennett has perfected at Charlottesville is doing the pack line defense, and that excels against teams that don't have dominant bigs because they can keep you out of the paint, force you to make ill-advised three-pointers, and you just have to shoot and pray. Whereas Arizona has probably the best big man in terms of pure big man. I mean, I'm a Duke fan. I love Marvin Bagley, but he's more of like a stretch four. This guy, DeAndre Ayton, is an animal. He's a full 7-foot frame, 260 pounds, 270 pounds, and he's just a man down on the block. I mean, good luck to Jack Salt and Isaiah Wilkins and all them guys trying to defend this monster if he has to make it. If they meet up in the Sweet 16, good luck. I mean, but other than that, Tennessee doesn't have a dominant big man, and Cincinnati just plays the same kind of game as Virginia. I mean, maybe they can catch Virginia on an off day, but I think if Virginia can not have to face Arizona, they can have a smooth ride to the Final Four.
And also, I know this is a little bit superstitious of me to say, but Arizona doesn't have the best track record in big games.
Oh, no, they don't.
Especially recently, so I don't know if I trust them. Even if the matchup seems favorable, I think that it's got to factor in a little bit.
I think them getting investigated by the NCAA might like flip the switch on their luck, though.
It takes a strong trigger sometimes to flip the switch on tournament luck, but maybe that was the strong enough trigger.
I mean, but if we're honest here, as a UVA fan, we don't have the best track record in the tourney either. So that's a really interesting matchup there.
Yeah.
So moving on to the West, which was James's pick: Xavier, Gonzaga, Michigan, and UNC. I know he mentioned who he thought was going to win, but who did you say you thought was gonna win your Sweet 16 matchups?
I had Gonzaga and Michigan.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, that's a really, really solid Final Four. I mean, Xavier, in my opinion, is probably the weakest of the number ones. And so, or Xavier,
I think I would continue with that line of thought and say Gonzaga is the strongest number 4 we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga can probably handle that matchup pretty well. It's really interesting though. The one thing I love about this tourney in general is you get to see these schools that are like in most other sports. They're like out, they're not in Power 5, so you don't think about them very much. But Xavier and Gonzaga are always in it. Wichita State's another one. It always seems to just kind of legitimize the rest of the conferences. And I love that. I love the fact that we'll definitely have another smaller school. Xavier, Gonzaga, Villanova, these schools outside of the NCAA basketball, you don't hear about them very much. And I think it's awesome that we keep seeing matchups like this that tend to happen outside of just predictions.
This tournament's awesome. I just want to say that once again. This is my favorite postseason because there's just so many. Well, one, there's so many games, and two, you get to see like, a Lipscomb taking on UNC. Like, when does that happen in any other sport?
Yep.
And Lipscomb having a legitimate opportunity to beat a team like UNC. I think that's just awesome. This tournament's amazing. But going on to the picks, Xavier is kind of a weak 1 seed. I think they kind of play more like a 2 seed, if you ask me. And it's very ironic and funny to me that all the times Gonzaga got 1 seeds in the past 5-6 years, and I think this is, as a 4 seed, their best chance to make it to the Final Four. I think they're actually the best team in this bracket, if you ask me. But I respect Michigan. Honestly, Michigan is really, really hot right now. They peaked at the right time. I talked about that earlier. Postseasons like this is really about peaking at the right time and not backing into the postseason. And Michigan is just going full steam ahead into the postseason. So that momentum will carry them through. I still have Gonzaga beating them in the Elite Eight. I think this is Gonzaga's time to shine. I think this is the best opportunity they're going to have to finally make it out and go compete for another championship. So Gonzaga versus Michigan is my Elite Eight matchup, and I'm going to pick Gonzaga to go to the Final Four.
Does anyone think UNC has a chance to make it out of this bracket at all? Just play devil's advocate here.
I don't like UNC. I don't have any stake in any team in the ACC. I've never been really anti-UNC, but I really don't like this UNC team.
Zach, how do you feel about UNC?
Let's ask the Duke guy. How do you feel about UNC? Do you respectfully give them a chance to get out of this bracket, or do you think they don't have a chance to get out of this matchup?
I think UNC prides itself on mucking up games, and there's not a team in this bracket that can out muck up a game than UNC. I mean, the only threat that I see to UNC is probably Michigan, because Michigan's playing on a much higher high than UNC. But outside of that, man, like Gonzaga, I don't know, man. This is yes, they are a very strong 4 seed in this year's tournament. But this is probably the weakest team I've seen Mark Few have at Gonzaga in quite a while. Like before, it was like Final Four bust. Now it's like, oh sweet, we're a high seed. Let's see how far we can go. Like they're just happy to be here. UNC had aspirations to be a 1 seed. I mean, they have 10 losses. They would have had 9 if they had won the AC tournament. I don't think they should have been it. But this is a weak, higher seeded bracket that I think they could squeak out of. And then after that, like you just have to be better than 2 other teams. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think this is the best North Carolina team. It's not a Roy Williams team, so I don't know. And what I mean by that is that they don't play Roy Williams basketball. They have 4 guards around 1 big man. Typically, Roy Williams has 2 or 3 big men on the field or on the court at all times. And this just isn't that. This is a pace and space kind of team. Like they beat Duke because they just wouldn't let Duke get offensive rebounds. Like this team is very, very versatile. I think that's not being factored in when you guys make these picks. But I mean, who knows? They can also get bounced in the second round by Providence. You never know.
Yeah, and Providence is another team to keep in mind out of this bracket, because Providence in their tournament, Providence took every single team to overtime. And they had a chance to beat Villanova. Villanova, shut them down in overtime, but Providence still took them there. And I think that's something that should be considered too. Providence isn't a pushover out of this region.
I didn't pick them, but I'm telling you, Lipscomb has a chance against UNC. Let it be known, I did pick it. If it comes true, I did mention it.
I'm going to throw a wrench in everyone's plans here. I picked Texas A&M to go to the Sweet 16.
Man,
they're so big, man. Like, they're not the best like field goal percentage team, but they have so many like big players, and they can, make a run of this thing. Big men win games in pressure situations because they're rocks. They're steady. They're always consistent. 3-point shooters can get inconsistent if they start getting wobbly. Texas A&M plays this very old-fashioned style of basketball, and I really like it. And I think they're going to outplay UNC in the round of 32.
And those are all really probable picks. Coming next to Zach's region with
just to finish off that bracket, though, I have to say the West is the most wide open bracket there is. I mean,
for sure.
Much debate that we've had. I can see Xavier, Gonzaga, Ohio State, Houston, Michigan, North Carolina, even Texas A&M. All those guys get out of there because there's no. It's. I mean, we'll get to the Midwest bracket, but the Midwest bracket has 3 Hall of Fame coaches. The West bracket has like it's the least stacked bracket there is. So.
I completely agree. I mean, the teams can make a run, man. It's like if you're a coach of one of these programs, you got to be telling your kids, it's right there. You got to just have the will to win, and you can make a run in this bracket.
Absolutely,
right there in front of you.
I mean, I have Houston in my Elite Eight, so yeah, I agree with Zach. It's absolutely wide open in the West. That's the bracket that's probably going to be butchered by the second weekend.
That is the most volatile
Thank you,
bracket. That could go literally either way, honestly.
And then the biggest X factor is Missouri getting Michael Porter Jr. back, who might be the best prospect, but he's been injured all year. Like that dude alone, if he hits his stride, he gets his week off, gets practice in. Oh man, if
it
changes
he hits
everything,
his
stride, he could throw a whole monkey wrench in that bracket as well.
Yeah, because Missouri's lowly ranked because he didn't play that well this season. So
there's so many wrenches in this bracket, and Xavier's pretty weak. So
yeah, Lipscomb.
The 1v8 matchup could be a lot closer than people think it is if that guy comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But moving on to the bracket that Zach was talking about, he had Villanova, West Virginia, Florida, Purdue. So, go into details, Zach. Who do you think's coming out of this one?
So Villanova, West Virginia. I mean, they played lights out this year. They did really, really well. I think they were a little underseeded in this, but I got to go with Villanova. I mean, Villanova is they're kind of like the offensive version of UVA, where they just choke you out on offense. Like they just play such good offense. Like, hey, all right, you think you can stop us? No, you can't. We're going to score this 3-pointer. Now come back and score. Oh, you didn't score? All right, we're going to do it again. They're just very, very efficient and very effective on offense. So I got them beating West Virginia. And then Florida against Purdue. I mean, Purdue's been they got so close to being the number one team in the nation, but Villanova and UVA kind of held a tight grasp of that number one spot against them, so they can never get to it. But I got Purdue beating Florida. I just don't think Florida has the willpower and firepower, especially how they petered out in the SEC tournament so early. I just don't think they stand a chance against Purdue. And then you got Purdue and Villanova. I mean, Matt Painter's squad is playing great, but I don't see the Boilermakers beating Villanova. Jay Wright finally got his championship 2 years ago, so he's got a nice swagger about him now. He's got the bravado to take his team back to another Final Four, just like I believe he did last year as well. So, or not last year, but I think they made a deep run last year as well. I think it's going to be Villanova going to the Final Four, and I mean it can be up for debate. I think the one team that could throw a monkey wrench into their plans, I didn't pick them, but Wichita State. I mean, you can never count out Wichita State, and then Virginia Tech against Villanova in that first round. I mean, they could definitely mess things up.
Yep, I think this is one of my favorite brackets, to be honest. There's a lot of good games here. And
there's a lot of good matchup opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. This is like Villanova, West Virginia. That's going to be a really fun game to watch. If that happens, to be honest, I love West Virginia's full court press against that Villanova offense. But I think you're absolutely right. Villanova is just too powerful on that side of the ball. I think they break through that full court press. I like West Virginia, I really do, but Villanova is just a better team. And yeah, Florida has like that team is so streaky, and they faced their first like actually good defense in the Sweet 16. And Purdue plays really good defense. I think Florida fizzles out. I think you're absolutely right about that. As soon as the threes stop dropping, as soon as the shooters start getting a little wobbly, Purdue's just going to strike at that moment and take them down. And Purdue's just lost to good offensive attacks, fast-paced offensive attacks this year, and Villanova does exactly that. Worst matchup possible for Purdue here, and Villanova goes back to the Final Four. I agree with your picks.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean, as a UVA fan, I am terrified. The one team out of all of these that I'm like, the two teams I don't want to see UVA face is Michigan State, because we always seem to lose to them, and Villanova. Because, like you said, UVA's whole entire stance is force you to make the three, and we're going to get the rebound. And Villanova will sink every single three we force them to make. So, yeah, Villanova is probably the most scariest team out of here. You have to catch Villanova on a bad night. Now, if you catch them on a bad night and the threes aren't going, you can beat Villanova. But very, very rarely are the threes not going. And I don't think they'll have a problem going through West Virginia or Purdue. So I agree with your picks.
I think West Virginia can actually beat Villanova. I love full court pressure. But I hate that the NCAA limited how much you can touch a offensive player. That hurts West Virginia greatly. That's why it hurt teams that used to press a lot, like Shaka Smart's VCU. Now Texas, they can't press like VCU did with Shaka Smart because NCAA hurt them with that rule. West Virginia can pull it off, but they're going to need a lot of offense. And I think Purdue's is going to be there with West Virginia, and Purdue's going to advance to Final Four.
All right. So I feel like that we were talking about like the previous bracket is probably the most wide open. I feel like that bracket's probably the most like I don't want to say
cut.
Yeah, clear cut. That one's pretty clear cut. Villanova's by far the favorite there. It'll take a massive upset.
Eric, if I could say something to respond to James before you move on. I hate to keep throwing in this factor because it's very like superstitious. West Virginia is kind of like Arizona, and the fact that they have a terrible track record in the tournament. They just seem to choke when big matchups come along. Honestly, I was scared to pick them to beat Wichita State, and I don't think they have it against Villanova. Not in this high pressure kind of situation. They just always seem to choke when it matters. So they could do it, but West Virginia's got to really show up to play that day, and I just don't see them showing up to play.
Along that same thread, I mean, it may not be Brad Stevens, but Butler has a pedigree for making a deep run in the tournament. So
there's two teams here that can that usually do that. Wichita State and Butler always seem to be the teams.
State, Greg Marshall thrives in this, and there's nothing he would love more to make it to his first Final Four and get to play Kansas. Like,
Oh
that'd be
man! Oh
ideal.
my God!
Don't sleep on St. Bonaventure in that first round if they make it to Florida.
Beat Syracuse once.
I'm telling you, that's
Wow,
a
these guys are
legit
good.
team. That is a legit team.
They are legit, man, but we just like messing with you.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to the Midwest. I had Kansas, Clemson, Michigan State, and Zach's boys, Duke. I have Kansas and Michigan State. And I picked Michigan State for a similar reason why Tom isn't high on West Virginia or Arizona, because of superstition. I have Virginia in the championship. I'm almost positive we're going to meet Michigan State there, because they always seem to show up. But not only that, I feel like Michigan State and Duke really match up really well. What each team does, they match up really well. I kind of consider them like 1A and 1B. They're almost the same team to a sense. They've each got that one guy who is the big name on the team. Then you got a bunch of guys that just play exceptionally well. I mean, Michigan State, when they got the number 1 seed, most people thought they were going to carry it throughout the entire season. And then they had that short little stumble in the middle of the season, and everyone was like, oh, well, Michigan State might not be as good as we thought they were. And then they came on at the end. Duke has been a similar thing. You thought Duke was going to be the best team in the world. They were never going to, they were going to take the 1 seed and run with it. They stumbled a little bit defensively, and then they came on at the end. I was expecting it to be UVA and Duke in the ACC tourney. So, and both of those teams, it's unfortunate that I think, and I'm pretty sure it's how it's going to be, but it's almost unfortunate that they play in the Elite Eight, because
Oh, they play in the Sweet 16.
Sweet 16, yeah. It's almost unfortunate that they have to. Even worse, it's almost unfortunate they play in the Sweet 16, because that means one of them has to go home, and that's a damn near Final Four game. Michigan State and Duke. So, Kansas and Clemson, not quite the same. Hurrah! I think Clemson's a lot better than the 5 seed. I said that before, but I don't think they're better than Clemson. Or I don't think they're better than Kansas. Excuse me. Kansas and Michigan State, again, I have Michigan State winning because of superstitious reasons, but Kansas is not a team to sleep on either. Kansas is exceptional. They, again, just like Michigan State and Duke, they had that stumble in the middle of the season like every big-name team did, and then came on in the end. They weren't even, if I'm not mistaken, well, yeah, they were. They were the number 1 seed in their tourney. But they weren't for the while. They came on at the end to get it. And I don't think Kansas is the strongest number 1. I feel like Villanova and UVA are 1A and 1B there, but Kansas is not a slouch number 1 pick. So it's going to be good, but I think Michigan State has the firepower to beat them.
I think whatever team makes it out of this bracket is going to have a lot of momentum going with them.
Absolutely, because they have to tackle
completely
so
agree.
many. They have to tackle so many big names to get there.
I believe in you, Syracuse.
This guy,
This is a really tough bracket to pick because there's a lot of teams that use momentum very well. Duke is especially one of those teams that really thrives with momentum. They have 2 relatively easy matchups coming in, and then they face off against potentially Michigan State if Michigan State doesn't get bounced early. I picked Duke to come out of this bracket. And by the way, I don't know what you saw in Clemson, but I had them even upset in the first round. I don't like Clemson very much.
Clemson seems to struggle against the top teams. I mean, they're 2-4 against top 25. They have the 10th ranked RPI, 18th BPI. I mean, they played really well. They beat North Carolina. Duke ran on them at the end, but they beat Ohio State. They beat Miami. They beat Florida. They beat Louisville. I mean, they've beaten some big teams.
and they've done it without their best player, which is crazy. They lost their best player after the non-conference schedule was done. I think like in the second ACC game. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. But the Clemson has one of the elite defenses. They're kind of like UVA, in the sense that they have a very elite defense. And if you have an elite defense, you can kind of give a little bit on the offensive side of the ball and still manage to win at the end. And that's why I have Clemson going to the Sweet 16.
Okay, fair enough. Does anyone want to talk about Auburn?
I was gonna say this bracket probably has the best collection of 1, 2, and 3 seed by far, and then Auburn just kind of represents a steep drop off.
I don't know. I think if they can keep games close, Auburn is one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country. I think they can take games if they keep them close.
Yeah.
They're not going to beat Kansas though.
No.
They'll struggle against Clemson, but that Clemson-Auburn game's close. I think Auburn can actually beat them in the end.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. Auburn could make run here. They're one of those under the radar teams. Honestly, they're a fun pick to think about. They're risky too, though, because they kind of backed into the tournament, and I kept talking about peaking at the right time, and Auburn has not peaked at the right time. So, but they have the ability to close out games if they're really close, which is a talent that I think shouldn't be ignored in high pressure situations like the NCAA tournament.
All right. So, real quick, let's break down our personal Final Fours. Who each of us have, So the Final Fours. Which team? I think we've kind of touched on it. Which team do you think has the easiest route to the Final Four? And which team do you think? Let's look at one seeds here. Which one seed do you think has the easiest route to the Final Four? And which one seed do you think has the hardest route to the Final Four?
Well, I got only one seed in the Final Four, and that's Villanova. So I think that I guess that gives my answer.
Yeah, pretty much.
Who has the easiest route? I think Villanova has a really great route to it.
Kansas has the hardest.
I had them play. I mean, they play a 16 seed play-in team, easy. I had them playing Alabama, who is not very good, and they'll just get ran over, steamrolled by Villanova's offense. They'll break West Virginia's full court press, and Purdue struggles against teams that keep the game really fast paced and kind of blow through their defense. They don't know what to do with themselves. I think Villanova has a relatively secure route to it, and then they run into Duke in the Final Four, and that's going to be a matchup. Especially because you said whoever comes out of the Midwest will have all the momentum. If Duke comes out of the Midwest after beating Kansas, they're going to be riding a high. It's going to be I think it's going to be a great high-scoring game if Villanova plays Duke in the Final Four.
What about you, Zach?
My Final Four, I got I got Villanova, Duke, UNC, and Arizona. Arizona, I'm simply just riding out DeAndre Ayton because I think I watched this dude. It was on like a Saturday night, Friday night, watching like a 10 p.m. Arizona game, and this dude just dominates his opponent. He looks at them like fresh lunch meat, man. It's insane. I think if UVA can contain him, they'll move on. But I got to go with Arizona. I think they can ride this out with Ayton and Alonzo Trier, and then UNC, man, they just have the pedigree. Like we said, that West is wide open. I think it'll either be UNC or Gonzaga, and I think UNC can beat out Gonzaga this year. Let Gonzaga know who's boss like they did last year. And then Villanova, like we said, they have the easiest route. I think Purdue's not a very strong 2 seed. I don't think Texas Tech's a very strong 3 seed. I think the biggest hurdles that Villanova is going to face is going to be in the first 3 games it plays, or the second game and the third game it plays, and either Virginia Tech, Alabama, and then West Virginia, Wichita State. If he gets out of that, it's a Final Four. I don't think anybody in that southern half of the bracket can beat them. And then Duke, Kansas, they're the number 1 seed this year, but they're number 1 seed just by the fortune of winning their conference and just letting their conference opponents beat each other up throughout the season. And they just snuck into a 1 seed. I don't think the weakest 1 seed at all. I still think that's Xavier. But Kansas, I feel like they just kind of inherited the 1 seed. They didn't really earn it. So I don't think Duke will have much trouble with them once they get there. But the biggest test, a lot of the analysts, and I'm sure you guys are going to be picking Michigan State to go on. I think if Duke can beat Michigan State, that'll be the biggest hurdle that they'll face up to the title game. I don't think Duke will have much issue with Villanova, because Villanova will not have a matchup to deal with Marvin Bagley. But, the teams I don't want to face in the championship are going to be UVA and UNC, so we'll see if that happens. If it does, an all-ACC final will be pretty nice. But, oh, man, I don't think Duke's ever had round 4 with UNC, so I don't know how this will go.
Oh, jeez.
God,
man. I'm sure ESPN's salivating at that possibility.
I can't wait to see what Grayson Allen does.
He's gonna
Right.
trip Roy Williams.
Should have run over and kick him in the shins, then run back to the. I didn't do anything. What are you talking about?
No, he's gonna run over there and rip his coat for him.
Anyway, so
he really,
go ahead, James.
I thought he really was gonna do it during Syracuse game. Luckily, the coat was strong or he was weak.
So championship games. All right, I'll start here. For me, again, I've said it about 3 times now. UVA, Michigan State. I feel like it's destiny. I mean, this is not the most talented team UVA's ever had, but it just seems to be the most well executed team that UVA's ever had. I feel like from a completely outside perspective, I think UVA this is probably the best chance UVA has had to make the championship game, just based on execution.
If they can get past Arizona and Cincy, then
Yeah.
But for the listeners of this podcast, if you don't know, a team that Eric roots for and is actually doing well always lets him down.
Absolutely. It's
so
routine.
don't pick UVA to win the championship.
So don't pick
Postseason
UVA.
collapse.
They are notorious for it. I'm a Capitals fan. I'm a Redskins fan. You can fill in the blanks. It's notorious. I think the best team I've ever rooted for so far has been the Orioles in 2014. That's probably been the farthest we've gone.
Can't lose in the playoffs if you don't make the playoffs, Redskins.
Yeah, exactly. But
5D chess
At Ravens.
at Ravens. Yep. Why get the playoffs when you can choke it away at the last second?
Yep. How many times have y'all had it until the last game of the season?
Hey, but the Ravens are kind of like Michigan State in basketball. As soon as we get to the tournament, better watch the hell out.
Yep, and that's what
Except
I'm afraid
last
of.
year.
Except last year. 2 years ago. 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
What are you talking about? Oh, Michigan State? Yeah, Michigan State.
When Middle Tennessee upset him as a 15 seed.
And when I totally didn't pick them to win the national championship or anything.
I would like it on the record, and I actually picked Middle Tennessee to upset them because they were Conference USA, and I wanted to pick them at least once. And I was
hate you.
blown away that they won.
I actually hate you.
I think.
Anyway, just tell
Yeah.
tell the people you picked UVA to win the
Yeah,
championship.
but I picked UVA to win. I picked UVA to win.
Yeah. Whoa, big shocker.
Woo!
And speaking of shockers, Wichita State is not in the national championship, but
Who'd you pick to win it all?
you know who I picked, big boy.
Villanova?
No, I have Villanova versus Cincinnati in the championship game, and I picked Cincinnati with the big upset.
Cincinnati.
The big Cinderella story out of nowhere. Cincinnati wins a low-scoring game, 58-53, takes down Villanova. Villanova doesn't know what the hell just happened. Cincinnati cuts down the nets.
Wait, isn't Cincinnati the school that has the rivalry with Xavier?
Yeah, they're in the same conference.
I want to see them play in the Final Four and duke it out. Quite literally.
Fight. Zach chose the chaos route.
All right, so we all know that Zach picked Duke to win it, but who do you have Duke going up against?
I got Duke going up against UNC.
I didn't deny it at all.
I think Theo Pinson is really hitting his stride, and Luke May. The X Factor is gonna be Joel Berry, man. He's been hit or miss all freaking year. Last year he was a beast, and this year he just can't seem to pull his head out of his ass. I mean, if he's playing well, and Luke May and Theo Pinson are doing what they're doing, they're gonna be hard to beat.
And
I think when they went up against, they could have beat UVA, but they used all their emotional energy to beat Duke. Like they used everything they had to beat us, and they just looked spent.
UNC is just glad there's no tests in the tournament or class.
It's a play-in game, right? Not a play-in quiz.
there's no entry
Not a
quiz,
play-in
right?
test.
There's no entry lecture I gotta go to, right?
And honestly, I'm kind of afraid to ask, but who's your championship games?
I have Syracuse beating Bonaventure.
Ha 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 ha. Okay. I got Cincy versus Duke.
Oh
With
wow!
Duke winning.
Oh,
Grayson Allen's
if you
gonna
all
go
know-
out on top.
Stop topping me.
Cincinnati's
Allen's going on top.
Cincinnati's my pick.
Grayson Allen winning a championship now. Oh man, he's gonna be a douche.
No, he'd be very mature about it. I think.
Oh yes.
Reformed player.
We thought he was reformed until last week.
And Jody won, and he just like tears off his jersey after winning.
He tears off his
the
jersey,
cameras.
throws it at somebody,
Middle
flips him off,
fingers to all the cameras.
trips up
Starts
the
smoking
ladder.
weed on the court.
Don't
Hey,
worry,
Tri-
great. I kind of wonder if Grayson Allen has a different Twitter like Kevin Durant.
Like an ulterior
He
You
has
motive.
know what? I would
the
not put it
burner-
past him.
The burner Twitter.
The burner account.
The burner
Yes.
account.
Grayson Allen's like walks off the court after holding the championship trophy, and he's like, "Hey, trip on these," and he grabs his nuts.
He does the
tripping
Baker
now?
Mayfield, man.
Baker Mayfield. Oh, that was funny.
Just do the "you suck me off" motion like Baker Mayfield did to Kansas.
Such swagger.
He pointed at a fan too. He was like, "You right there,
Yep.
eat me."
But that wraps up our podcast here, our breakdown of the NCAA tournament.
Fear the Bearcats.
We have Cincinnati, UVA, and 2 Duke fans. We would like to know what your bracket is. Let us know who your championship game is down below in the comments section. Tweet it at me. Send it to me in Facebook. What have you. Let's see who picks this one right. I have actually picked 2 of the last. I think I've been doing the bracket since 2011. And I have, out of the 7 years I've done it, I've actually picked 3 championships correctly. So,
I know which one you didn't pick, buddy.
yeah.
I know which one you didn't pick, buddy.
Feel salty,
Last
man.
year's.
The one
Not-
who says a lot.
Did not pick last year's, right. But I think I picked Kansas's. I think it was our freshman year of college, so 2011, 2012. I picked Kansas, I picked UNC, and I picked Villanova. I picked Villanova's 2 years ago. So those are the 3 I picked. But that is it for us. My name is Eric.
My name is Tom.
I'm Zach.
James is out.
Yep, James is out. We're all out. We are the Nomads. We'll catch you guys in probably about 2 weeks for the gaming podcast. Keep your eyes up for that.
Get
Lots
ready
of-
for some madness.
Hey, watch out for that Lipscomb. Lipscomb's coming.
James, you can't even say the school right.
Sounds like something to do to your mustache.
I didn't want to say it, Zach.
Alrighty, guys.
I didn't want to say it.
We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.